Okay, Wildcats, today we're looking at Tuesday, October 23rd, solving equations with rational exponents, part 1. That's going to be on page 20. Now you'll notice that Wednesday will be your assignment day that goes along with Tuesday. So if you would, update your table of contents. All right, now your table of contents are updated. Let's take a look at our notes. All right, solving. Notice I put radical equations. And that's kind of, when you talk about rational exponents, you're talking about radical equations, okay? So steps to solve radical equations. Step 1, isolate the radical. Step 2, raise both sides of the equation to the power equal the index of the radical. Well, some of you are saying, well, what's an index? Well, here's what an index is. An index is what the radical tells what kind of root it is. So this 2 and the 3 are the index, okay? Or the n here is the index. Notice also I've shown you how you can make this as a rational exponent. So the square root of x is the same as x to the 1/2 power, and this is the cube root of x, which can be written as x to the 1/3 power. So that's where you're talking about the rational exponents or radical. So radical, rational exponent. Okay, and then the last step is to simplify and solve. So if you would, update your notes. All right, now your notes are updated. Let's go on to the examples. All right. Notice, and I put radical equations and rational exponents, okay? Part 1 on page 20. Let's take a look at example 1. Solve the radical equations below. So here the index is 2, so you're going to do the power to both sides. So we're going to square both sides, okay? So what happens, this becomes to the power of 1, which I think we've talked about earlier. So then that's x plus 1 equals 2 squared is 4. Now last is to solve. We subtract 1 from both sides. So x equals 3. All right, let's take a look at example 2. So here it's to the power of 1/2. So we're going to square both sides. Okay. And to show this step here, if you have 2x plus 4 to the 1/2 power and you square it, that's 9. Well, you just multiply the exponent. So that's 2x plus 4 to the 2 divided by 2, which 2 divided by 2 is 1. So this in essence is the power of 1. So you're just left with 2x plus 4 equals 9. Subtract 4 from both sides. Left with 2x equals 5. Divide both sides by 2. X equals 2.5. Notice that I put the square root of x and x to the 1/2 power next to each other because in essence they're worked out the same way, okay? All right, so let's take a look at example 3. All right, so the index is 3, so you're going to cube both sides. This becomes a power of 1, so you get x minus 1. 2 to the 3rd power is 8. Add 1 to both sides, so x equals 9. Let's take a look at example 4. So here the index is 1/3, so you're going to cube both sides. That becomes to the power of 1, and we're not going to have to show that step here. We can go from here to here. So we're going to go from here to 3x minus 4 equals 3 to the 3rd power. So 3 times 3 is 9. 9 times 3 is 27. Okay, we're going to add 4 to both sides. So you get 3x equals 31. We're going to divide both sides by 3. So x equals, you can actually leave it as a fraction, or you can put it as a decimal. And 31 divided by 3 is 10.33 repeating. And that, we write that so it's a little bit better. 1, 0. You can write it as either one of those. I prefer the fraction because it's just much cleaner, but either one is mathematically acceptable. All right, let's take a look at example 5. Now, in examples 1, 2, 3, and 4, the radicals were all isolated, okay? In example 5, they're not isolated, so we need to isolate them first. So we're going to divide both sides by 4. So that becomes 1. You get the square root of 2 to the x power, or I'm sorry, square root of 2x equals 20 divided by 4 is 5. Now we're going to square both sides. That becomes power of 1. You're left with 2x equals 25. Divide both sides by 2. So x equals 12.5. All right, let's take a look at example 6. Now, first thing, you want to isolate the absolute value, so we're going to divide both sides by 5. Five divided by 5 is 1. You have cube root of 125x equals 5. We're going to cube both sides. That becomes power of 1. You're left with 125x equals 125. Divide both sides by 125. X equals 1. All right, so finish up example 5 and 6. All right, now let's look on to the next page. Remember, this goes in your journal. And this page is also going to go in your journal, okay? Example number 7. Now here, you have this to the 3/2 power. Now, we need to make this to the power of 1. So, if you think about it, if we have 3/2 times 2/3, that becomes 6/6, which equals 1. So what we need to do is raise both sides by 2/3 power. Well, as we get the blurriness out. Okay, this from here we see that that becomes the power of 1, so you're left with x plus 7 equals, if you put this in your calculator, 343 to the 2/3 power is 49. Well, last step, subtract 7 from both sides. X equals 42. Okay, in essence, same thing, except for here we have 2/3. So we need to multiply it by 3/2 because then that will become 6/6, which is 1. So we need to raise both of these by 3/2. Well, 16 raised to the 3 divided by 2 is 64. And then this becomes the power of 1. You have 4 minus 12x. We subtract 4 from both sides. So you have 60 equals negative 12x. Divide both sides by negative 12. So negative 5. So negative 5 equals x. All right, so finish up examples 7 and 8. All right, now let's take a look at examples 9 and 10. All right, same thing here, but we have to isolate the radical first. So we actually need to add 8 to both sides first. That becomes 0. You have x plus 6 to the 2/3 power equals 16. And we need to raise both sides by 3/2. This becomes power of 1. You get x plus 6 equals 16 to the 3 divided by 2 is 64. Subtract 6 from both sides. X equals 58. All right, let's take a look at example 10. So first thing, isolate the radical, or the rational exponent. So we're going to subtract 1 from both sides first. So you get 2 equals 2x to the 5/4. We're going to divide both sides by 2. So you get 1 equals x to the 5/4. We need to raise this to the 4/5 and this to the 4/5. 1 to the 4/5 power is 1. And then that becomes 1, so x equals 1. All right. Last problem, let's take a look at example 11. So first things first, you're going to subtract 2 from both sides. So then that's negative 12 equals negative 3x to the 1/2. We're going to divide both sides by negative 3. That becomes 4 equals x to the 1/2. And we need to square both sides. So you get 16 equals, that becomes 1x equals 16. All right, so that finishes up your examples. So I'm going to tear this page off. So this page and this page go in your journal. This one first, then this one. Okay, and then this is the assignment that you're working on, and you're going to finish, and I'm going to check for completion on Wednesday, October 24th. So with that, have a wonderful Wildcat day.